The myth that the CIA is anti-communist, another right-wing conspiracy theory. Why would a channel called Malay in English do a video on the CIA? Well, for one thing, the CIA has run covert operations in Argentina. One of those operations was called Condor, which resulted in at least 9,000 Argentinians being killed. The CIA exacerbated the political violence and contributed to the country's dirty war, which left over 30,000 people dead or disappeared. Naturally, the Wikipedia article is slanted, so it sounds like this was a right-wing operation to destroy leftist communists. The CIA, by the way, controls every controversial Wikipedia article and has done a great job of cultivating this image of the CIA as being a right-wing anti-communist organization. But you have to ask yourself, why would an organization devoted to anti-communism have picked as their leader John Brennan, who voted for the Communist Party candidate Gus Hall in 1976? But that's not all. The OSS, which was the forerunner of the CIA, was created by FDR, the socialist president who created the New Deal. FDR selected William Donovan to lead the OSS. Donovan, who's often described as being Republican, switched his allegiance to FDR and the New Deal and became a Democrat. What a surprise. Not only that, because Donovan came from Columbia University, he recruited heavily from the Frankfurt School out of Columbia University, which is the school of thought which created critical theory, which is the forerunner of today's wokeism, also known as cultural Marxism. Some notable early recruits in the OSS included George Bateson, who, while AI says he wasn't a socialist, was a critic of consumerism and the focus on individual profit, and a critic of capitalism's destructive tendencies. Not a socialist, though. Another notable early recruit in the OSS was Kurt Lewin. He was a socialist and admitted that he was a socialist. And Ruth Benedict, who wasn't a socialist but was a progressive because of her strong stances against racism and her advocacy of cultural relativism, but not a socialist. So these are the right-wing anti-communists that the OSS recruited from the very beginning. So the CIA, from its inception to William Brennan, has had high-level people as socialist Marxists in its organization. The idea that the CIA is a right-wing anti-communist organization is just carefully curated bullshit. But don't worry, if you believe the idea that the CIA is an anti-communist right-wing organization, you're just being a good, useful idiot for the CIA. And the CIA thanks you for your service. The CIA's connection to socialist and Marxist organizations and causes doesn't end there, though. One of the early projects that the CIA created called the Congress for Cultural Freedom. The CCF was supposedly created in 1950 to counter Soviet influence. A co-founder of the CCF was Arthur Koestler. He was a former communist who had broken with the Soviet Union. Another interesting character is Max Horkheimer, who is considered a towering figure in cultural Marxism. Not surprisingly, Horkheimer participated in at least one junket created by the CCF and appears to have been an institute director in the Frankfurt School at Columbia. And Theodor Adorno, a towering figure in cultural Marxism, Adorno published in the CIA journal Der Monat, the largest review of its kind in Europe, a model for many of the agency's other publications. His articles appeared as well in two other CIA magazines. Through the OSS and CIA channels and foundations, the Frankfurt School of Ideas helped shape Western Marxism that critiqued capitalism aesthetically and psychologically, but avoided calls for systematic overthrow. This recuperated radicalism made it palatable for academia and anti-communist policy. Though the CCF was founded by a communist and its leading intellectuals were communists, somehow the Congress for Cultural Freedom was an anti-communist organization. This just stretches the credibility beyond the breaking point. The CIA is a communist organization. It is, in many ways, the same thing as the GRU was in the Soviet Union. Not once have I read anything about the CCF pushing the ideas of John Locke, natural rights, capitalism, Ayn Rand, the Declaration of Independence, the American Revolution, or the Bill of Rights, English or American. What it pushes is cultural Marxism, critical theory, and irrationalism. The Frankfurt School at Columbia is the origin of critical theory. Critical theory is the basis of wokeism. This is Marxist crap pushed on the American people, paid for by the American taxpayers. In addition to the fact that the CIA created a Marxist organization called the Congress for Cultural Freedom, the CIA was heavily involved in pushing modern art. The supposed idea was to make culture a subversive weapon. Subversive to whom? Subversive of Western values and reason. The CIA infiltrated news media, they infiltrated Hollywood, they made the careers of Gloria Steinem, Jack Pollard, Andy Warhol, and William Decanat, all of whom were socialists. The CIA is a major funder of television and film in Hollywood, and they have input on many television shows and movies. In addition, under the Biden administration, the CIA puts out a recruitment commercial having a cisgender millennial as their star. It's impossible to believe that the CIA, which has not confined itself to foreign issues and spying on foreigners, is not pushing the same cultural Marxism/wokeism down the throat of the American public. These people are all traitors and should be given a 21-gun salute. One publication explained cultural Marxism as the intellectual elaboration of the will to destroy, as it pertains to traditional culture and social bastions. Karl Marx had a will to destroy, and the Communist Manifesto is a handbook for the destruction of whatever remained in this late epoch of Western organic bonds, such as family, marriage, faith, free capitalist attachment to village, church, and land. It's actually nice to know that none of these idiotic ideas survived on their own. The stupidity of modern art, the stupidity of wokeism being pushed, was only possible because of the funding by the CIA and its related groups. But not only has the CIA been pushing Marxism down American throats and the rest of the world's throats, but they've engaged in the most irrational, unscientific projects imaginable. The American people have had to pay for this treason. One of the crazy, irrational, unscientific projects that the CIA took on was the CIA's Stargate project, which sought to use psychic abilities for intelligence gathering. Researchers like Igno Swan developed methods such as coordinated remote viewing, where psychics were given coordinates to describe a target location. The Stargate project trained psychic spies to locate military targets and enemy weapons or missing persons. They also explored broader psychoenergetics. I mean, talk about unscientific BS. To no rational person's surprise, these were complete failures. These people should all be in prison, as well as the congressman who funded this nonsense. Of course, almost everyone knows about the absurdity of the MK Ultra program, which was almost certainly what created the Unabomber. The MK Ultra program explored the use of LSD. The CIA used LSD on people unwittingly, which is clearly unconstitutional, of which all of them should be thrown in jail for life. Other mind control projects besides the MK Ultra project included Bluebird and Artichoke. The CIA funded this insane project by Lieutenant Colonel William McDonnell to report on a possible way for people to convert energy of their mind and body into a laser beam that can transcend space-time, called the gateway process. Furthermore, the mainstream media news networks continue to employ former CIA operatives. There's no such thing as a former CIA operative. It's like being in the Marines. Once a Marine, always a Marine. The most famous of former CIA people who are now in mainstream news media includes James Clapper and Michael Hayden, but there are many more. What's interesting to note is all of these former spies go to work for left-wing mainstream media organizations. So not only is the CIA pushing cultural Marxism, they've penetrated modern art and, in fact, completely created the whole modern art industry, penetrated our news media, penetrated Hollywood, but supposedly they're only focused on external international issues. But I can just hear some leftist person screaming about how the CIA always sponsors these right-wing dictatorships in foreign countries. The first thing that you have to remember is what we know about the CIA is almost always what the CIA wants us to hear. If the CIA wants to get funded, they have to act like they're an anti-communist organization. As we've seen, they're not anti-communist at all. They're Marxists through and through. In addition, we also have to understand that Marxists love chaos. Chaos is always their friend. It doesn't matter whether the chaos is committed by left-wing groups or right-wing groups. Note, so-called right-wing groups are also collectivists, that is, socialists also. They are not espousing freedom, block, and natural rights. A perfect example of this is if you allow or bring in huge numbers of undocumented illegal people into the country to commit heinous crimes, which of course you would be against if you were a rational person. But if you're a Marxist, this just plays into your hands. You love the overreaction that allows you to push the idea of a digital ID or a national ID on everyone, as is happening in the UK right now. This just furthers your goal of totalitarian government. In summary, it's clear that the CIA is not a right-wing anti-communist organization. It's a left-wing Marxist organization, has been from the very beginning. It's evil, it's anti-American, and it needs to be terminated. The idea that it can be reformed is just absurd. Let's put a stake through the CIA's heart now.